Meeting to order. Roll call.
Ms. Mucko?
Here.
Mr. Olson?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Clock?
Here.
Mr. Perkins?
Here.
Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Hearing none. Chairman's remarks. I know that Anne Marie will be covering this as RFP is closed for the investment services, and we have 3 proposals in. So we'll be meeting to review those and maybe at the next meeting.
I sent an email,
Okay.
I think to you and Jody and Pat trying to put together
A
a meeting.
meeting.
So just take a look at the email and send me some dates and we'll get something put together.
Okay, on to approval of the minutes. Let's do the work session minutes first.
Oh, okay.
We'll do the work session minutes and we'll get to the regular meeting minutes. Work session minutes dated June 21st. Any changes to those, or do we move for approval?
I move we approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, work session minutes approved. Now on to the regular minutes for June 21.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to add some things I could work with Pam on rather than take the board's time. But there are some, and it'll be distributed to the board as well
Just some of your comments that you made during the meeting.
during
If you
the
want to
meeting
report it.
last week. Yes,
Nice, yeah. Feels like last week. Okay, and I think those are in regards to,
the remarks I wanted to include in the minutes was my question to Ryan about how much they had in the bank.
discussion.
And I just wanted to have that in the minutes. Since we're doing the additional funding.
And Pam, you can work with Ty on getting those.
Sure.
All right, with that change, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. All right, on to the monthly activity and financial report. And Pat.
Great, thank you. Couple of updates. Pardon me. Last week, Cody, Anne Marie, Allie, and I attended the Venue Connect, which is the international conference for IAVM, International Association of Venue Managers, that we're all a part of. It was in Phoenix. It was 114 degrees outside. It was 60 degrees inside, which I'm fine. It's just I got some congestion from going hot to cold, so apologize for that in advance. But I thought I'd just give a couple of brief highlights. Again, thanks to the board's support, I think we can always be very proud of how Boise Center operates comparative to everybody else in the industry across the country. Canada, particularly, Canada is still trying to get up and running, though most of their facilities are open. They're still trying to get their feet under them. But we continue to be ahead of most of the facilities across the country. Staffing levels are problematic across the board. Finding people, a lot of facilities actually let everybody go. They pretty much just closed their facilities up or operated to such minimal levels serving the community. They were hospital beds, they were distribution points, as we were for food, they were vaccination centers, that sort of thing. But very few operated like we did throughout the entire time. Another, again, across the board, cost of employees, both new and retention, higher than anyone has ever seen. And even a couple of sessions that talked about forecasts for the industry, they don't see that going away anytime soon, even with the potential of a recession on the horizon. Employees are still going to be a challenge to find and fill. We're currently about 190, 195. We put a lot of eggs in the BSU basket. We've got 50 eggs that when they return, we're hoping to 30 to 50 employees. We've got a new hire bonus program going, particularly that's focused on high school and college. And we've got a great college staff already, and they're very involved with us, and so we're hopeful that we'll be successful. Supply chain issues exist everywhere. Convention center projects are moving forward, albeit with changes to design and in some cases long delays for procurement. So some of the expansions and renovations and things that have been planned are moving slowly or on hold in some cases. Forecast for some parts of the country are lagging to 2024 due to slow return of corporate travel, corporate sponsored events and meeting programs. So a lot of the trade show association meeting planners are getting back into it pretty quick, but a lot of major corporations are delayed at this point. They're waiting to see what happens with recession. They're waiting. A lot of people working from home, how difficult it is to get them working back in the office. We heard that a lot. Most meeting planners are anxious to get back to business. According to one survey that a company presented to us, 79% have already had or plan to have in 22 their meetings. So that's a pretty high percentage. There's a lot of confidence back, but there's still that lag. Increasing costs of airfare, hotels, and facilities are the main reasons for not planning meetings right now. Pretty self-explanatory. More of an effort by meeting planners to hold some more sustainable events, but finding the costs in some cases to be prohibitive. So for instance, looking to have less paper and more bamboo, less beef, less plastic in any fashion, more refillable bottle stations. I think we have 12 or 13 between the two facilities, so we're ahead of that. Separator stations at each event where there's breakdown areas that companies will provide, and everything that comes back is sorted, everything from food that's coming back on plates to whatever is being used on a trade show floor or in meetings. That's pens, pencils, notebooks. If they have foam core boards, the foam core boards are required to go back with the meeting planners. The facility won't accept them. The goal is zero carbon footprint meetings. And there's a couple of facilities out there that have had a couple of those meetings, and there were some slides, but it's labor intensive. And the products that are used have to be very selective, both from the food products to the ancillary utensils that go with it. So farm to table meals are preferred. Cashless transactions, we went cashless here. And during one of the sessions, it was asked how many people still accept cash, and there were like 3 out of a room of 80 or 90. So cash is pretty much out there. It's interesting though that like the Phoenix Convention Center has an ATM machine, and right next door they have a credit card or a debit card machine. So you can take out cash to buy the debit card to use at their concessions. So they've covered sort of all the bases on that one. Because they don't accept cash, but a lot of people, if they don't bring a debit or credit card or whatever else, they can buy that and use that at their concessions. And some of the arenas and stadiums are doing that too. Updates to the economic impact model. IAVM has been working with Destinations International and getting when I say improvements, the economic impact model is pretty solid, but they're looking to do some tweaks to it. So that's coming, that should be out this year, the new generation of employees. Kind of interesting, I was in a session that included college campuses, both from the educational side, the classroom side, as well as the facilities side. So whether it be arenas, stadiums, gymnasiums, whatever they are, a lot of the colleges are having difficulty finding employees. A friend of mine who manages Montana State University, some folks that were there from BSU, and we talked about this at the regional meeting, and some of the other college campuses, they've got a captive audience of 20 to 50,000 or more students, and they can't find enough students to fill positions. And so the question, and there were like 4 college students in the room for this. And so it's interesting to get the perspective that there's a higher level of work-life balance. They want less structure. And these are the Gen Z or the current college age kids. And this is a very broad brush. So again, I don't want anybody offended or anything. This is just a broad brush. More work-life balance, less structure. They expect wage increases quickly. They like more personal time. This one I thought was really interesting. They're really interested in employee assistance programs, psychological or mental health. And that's actually a pretty high priority. We offer an employee assistance program. We have for several years to anybody who is interested in it. And we have maybe half a dozen people throughout the year who take advantage of it. It was interesting to hear that this generation, it's a priority. It's both interesting and concerning on several levels, but it's important and we offer it. So I'm proud of our team for that. And walk or bike to work is becoming more preferential. So those are just some of the things that came out of it. I want to let you know that I think the entire team, myself included, represented Boise Center well. We didn't get thrown out of any sessions. Actually, Cody is a representative for Region 4 on the Region 4 board, which starts setting him up for progression through IABM hierarchy. Allie is also, she's going to be the incoming chair of the sales,
Their convention center committee.
the Convention Center Sales Consortium. She's the incoming chair, and she actually, with Brett Mitchell from Overland Park, he's the current chair. They oversaw several sessions and speakers. So very proud of the team. Anne Marie was right there for me when we were in some of these sessions and talking about some of the impacts that we've seen, particularly employees, supply chain issues and those sorts of things. So I think we, in fact, there were some times when it was a little embarrassing because it was almost like things we were talking about were things we were already doing. So I say embarrassing because we were answering a lot of the questions. And so that made me feel good about where we are, what we're doing. There are opportunities for the board if you are ever interested in participating. We've had a couple of board members over the years attend Venue Connect. I don't know if we've had anybody actually attend the regional meeting. I think a couple might have attended. It was here back in 2018 or 2019. But the big show, the Venue Connect, will be in Pittsburgh next July 30th through August 2nd. And then the Region 4 regional meeting will be in Portland in May 2nd through 6th. And so if the board ever wants to attend either of those, just to get a feel for what we do, how we do it, how we stack up against others in the industry, you're always welcome and encouraged to attend. So like I said, we've had a couple that did it. We took the opportunity on Monday. Ungerbach had a meeting in the morning to go over some of their new systems. And USI is who we use internally for our software, for programming and for accounting. And so we had the opportunity. Allie had seen that Bell Bank Park was open in Mesa. And so she reached out to their director of sales, and we got a private tour of that facility. And you know, you've heard me talk about multi-purpose indoor sports facilities. I was thinking way too small. This one's $260 million, $267 million, 344 acres, and we all took the tour. And in fact, one of my counterparts from Lancaster joined us for that tour. Just real quickly, 344 acres, thing is huge. Indoor and outdoor. They have a park, they have a performance center. Part of their PT area has a hypobaric chamber, red light therapy, cryogenic freeze therapy. It goes to 134 degrees below zero, and you can't stay in there longer than 3 minutes. I'm not sure anybody who would want to, but those are the rules. And then they have a sauna with red light therapy as well. State-of-the-art stuff. This place is incredible. They have a fitness center. Dan O'Brien, as the Olympic champion, Dan O'Brien, he's the VP of operations for the Legacy Fitness Center portion. and they have training lanes. They have a football field that's maybe 40 yards wide by 75 yards long. So you can do specific, and it's marked off. And then they have racing lanes, track lanes set up on each side where you can work on speed drills, you can work on whatever. And then they have all kinds of machines around the perimeter of this thing. They've got weight rooms.
How's it funded?
Pardon me?
How is it funded?
It's a private public partnership. It's a 501c.
6, I think.
So it's a nonprofit, but it's a lot of sponsorships, a lot of corporate sponsorships, and then memberships.
So who's the clientele?
It's the nonprofit side is for at-risk and physically and mentally challenged youth. You know, so there's programs specifically designed for those, but there's dance, there's cheer, there's indoor, they have like 30 indoor basketball courts that are convertible to volleyball courts. They have, I want to say it's 300,000 square feet is under roof, and the rest of it's all outside. They have pitches for, well, they have pickleball, but they have pitches for cricket. They have outdoor volleyball, they have baseball, softball. They have pavilion area for concerts. They have what's called GOAT, and that's their restaurant, 300 seats inside, 300 seats outside. It's a sports bar on steroids, pun intended. There are like 200 screens just inside the sports bar. Wherever you sit, you can watch whatever you want. There are screens everywhere. Clean, ultra clean. I was really impressed. We didn't go back to the kitchen, but they have an arcade.
Public side, is there a taxing district that's involved?
No. They have hospitality suite. They have, there's a sponsored area outside. A couple of car dealerships sponsor this area, and it's the walkway between indoors and the restaurant and the arcade, but they have zip lines. So you can do zip lines over and watch the crowds below you. This place is unbelievable. It was very impressive. And it was spotless, the entire facility. And it's in high demand. It's built, it's in Mesa, but it's in the outskirts of Mesa where there's new developments going on. 2 small other communities are already built. And again, the memberships for, I mean, while we were there, they were doing summer camps for dance and gymnastics for kids. They had some kids playing basketball. I mean, the place is massive, but I thought I'd share with you. I mean, we took advantage of the opportunity, and it got a little scary because we were able to get out there with an Uber pretty easy, but it's 45 minutes from the convention center. And so as we got out there, we realized how rural it became. We were worried about getting an Uber back. Didn't know if anybody be driving around out there and want to take us back. We were fortunate we got the right back. But I thought I'd share with you, it was a very productive week. There were a lot of good sessions. I think we all got a lot out of it. And I think Boise Center represented itself very, very well. So just highlights on that.
The new IAVM economic impact model, is that something that we would use?
We currently use it.
When they change it, when they update it?
There were, once whatever updates come out, we'll start adapting it in. So FYI, the logistics committee has been putting on a fundraiser for school supplies for the Boise City and Ada County Housing Authority, just one of the community outreach programs. We're also helping the Rotary Club I belong to on August 10th. There's a couple of Rotarians who have gotten backpacks and supplies for Whitney Elementary. And it's kind of like what we do for Misty at the holidays. We just get a bunch of people in this room, set everything up, everybody stuffs. In this case, they'll be stuffing backpacks, put them in boxes and out the back door. But so again, it's a community outreach on that we we're involved with. I was informed by one of the banquet captains that when the meeting's over, we'll reach out. We have a flower show in, if you didn't notice, if you didn't smell it coming in or notice it. Albertsons is doing their flower show, and they've made available different bouquets and stuff to take home. So we'll check in if anybody's interested with taking flowers home or to somebody. You're welcome to them. I don't know what that looks like, but banquet captain will let me know. So tomorrow afternoon, well, on Thursday afternoon, when the show is over, they do a public free-for-all. If you want flowers, come and get them. So again, Thursday afternoon, that'll be available too if you have any interest. So, Hi, you had asked me about some of the CapEx projects that we had going that 10 million included. And I'll just get into it a little bit now rather than the report, but most of that right now is ceiling project, because the ceiling, even though we postponed it from 2022, we still have work that needs to be done in the ceiling itself. And we're still projecting between 6 and 7 million over the next 3 years, spread out over the next 3 years. Next year, probably at least almost $1 million will be spent in East on carpet, wall covering. I mean, again, just the normal rotational projects that we have, but it's ballroom carpet, wall coverings, that sort of thing. Also the ballroom project here, the ceiling project also is going to include the rotational rehab of the 100 ballrooms. So the carpet, the wall coverings and that sort of thing. So that takes in about 9 million of the 10. The other is just miscellaneous projects that you need to get done, equipment and whatnot. So I don't know if that answers the question, or
You did, Pat.
I want to make sure you knew I didn't forget. So I'll try to go through the rest of it fairly quickly. So we're starting the budget planning and review for next year. We need to probably start talking to the finance committee about reviewing budgets late August, early September. June was a record room tax collection. Last year, July, August, and September were $1 million months. June hit $1 million month. So I'll let Emery talk about where we're going to project the revenue for the end of the year. June was back on track with annual conventions, meetings, and banquets. We did have a couple of cancellations due to COVID back earlier in the year, but we had a great June. Supply chain issues, we've talked about that. Pardon me. Ceiling repair project in 110 air wall replacement is still slated for August. And it's the first phase of ceiling repair. We're going to take out some ceiling panels. We're going to open the grid system a little bit, and that'll be the first phase of it. It'll open up access to the rest of it. And then
Madam Chair, Pat, I see the hotel revenues are cumulative, like $1 million over budget. Why is that?
predominantly rates. Downtown core, I just got that, I get a quarterly report on a select group of hotels. And rates are up $30 year on year in that segment. And overall, I think the rest of the segment is up about 20 year on year, and we'll show that on the slide. Occupant demand it remains at or above last year's levels, which was record levels as well. So it's a combination, but predominantly rates are huge.
Thank you.
We had one event here, I mean, July, a little early to talk about it, but I think we're on pace to have a record July. Every week we've had back-to-back events. We had one event that went 2 days, week and a half ago, and the invoice was $254,000. That was one event. So July is looking strong. August a little bit slower, but that's been forecasted, and we need it, quite honestly. So that's where we're going to get the ceiling, a little bit of capital work done. visitation, getting more international visitors, which I think is exciting and interesting. California, Idaho, Texas, Oregon. Some of this, I want to say, is probably part of the Northwest Soccer tournament that was in June. Obviously, it brought teams from all over. In fact, I saw one team from Chile. It was interesting. So I think that had something to do with it, which is good. I don't have the exact number. Allie might in her presentation for the economic impact from Cary that the soccer tournament had. So if she does, I'll no, okay. We'll get that. To the district, I mean, because of the number of hotel rooms that they take up, I mean, they book everything from Mountain Home to Ontario for the soccer tournament. So at least the last estimate I did was close to 200,000 in room tax revenue just from that week-long event. So the transfers are below budget. Good news all around on this one. Again, our cash position remains strong. I'll get to the room tax forecast for the year, but we're going to have a record year this year, barring any unforeseen circumstances the last 4 months. Our event activity is positive. Pardon me. As I shared with the board, and in fact, this is another point that we found from several other facilities last week. Pretty much everybody this fall has put a cap or a moratorium at this point on new events. Everybody's waiting to see what the employment situation looks like through the end of August. It's ironic. I mean, we were talking to Allie's old boss at the Austin Convention Center, and that she was showing a little frustration, as did Allie, when I said we don't have a lot of available dates anyway, but let's just hold off from booking anything else. And so it was actually sort of refreshing to hear that, difficult sort of way that we're all in this together and we're all feeling the same pain. So, but we're still looking positive on the trends for both our attendance numbers as well as the number of events. Conventions are pretty locked in at this point. So, again, numbers right now remain really positive. The guest satisfaction, Anne Marie helped put in a few of the comments that we got from some of the feedback that we received specifically. It's always nice when our employees are mentioned by name. Culinary continues to do really well for us. So some of the challenges, we get a comment that the room was too hot or too cold. We'll get a comment that internet went down or something, and when we go back, we find out that it really wasn't our internet, but to a client, sometimes they just express what they've heard. So, but otherwise, I think we're spot on. So I'm proud of the team where we are. Some of the stats, and to Jody's question, ADR 146, and this is community-wide, up $13 from prior month, up 28% from last year. So again, occupancy, I tend to look at demand rather than occupancy percentage because of some of the openings and closings of the hotels, but regardless, demand and occupancy both remain strong. So, and what's interesting, it's not just last year, it's 2019. And as the board knows, from a room tax revenue perspective, last year was the second highest we've ever done, even with some demand being off in some of the months. In room demand and revenues, up 35% from prior year, a record for May. Room demand up 8% over last year, 3% over 2019. So again, to Jody's question, ADR and demand. Convention booking, we're reaching a saturation point where I don't know that we're going to see more than between 60 and 70 conventions a year. And that's going to be dependent, pardon me, somewhat on size and timing, but the demand that we have both from the convention side and the local side have reached the point where we're doing, and you've heard me talk about this before, so this is somewhat just not new information, but just again reiterating that any new space we get probably will go for local events, the large local events, because of the demand, because the availability of hotels is limited. So that's why you're going to see as we move forward. I don't know that we're going to be able to do many more conventions than what we're seeing. I think it's just going to be a matter of balancing the markets. Not negative news, because I think we're going to continue to be successful, no matter what. It's just the number of conventions we're going to continue to be limited to because of hotel availability. Nothing really new here. The consistent mid-sized conventions are really our bread and butter. We're constricted to get the larger ones by room availability. So that's the battle that we're fighting.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. So just a little bit of a financial report, just to update a little bit on the markets. So the conference and the corporate segments are returning to the key markets, and that was apparent in our conversations that we had at IAVM, which is also resulting for demand on our space and our and that is also what's creating our record tax revenues. One of the conference or sessions we were in, and they were talking about attendance, and for the industry, attendance is down about 30% compared to 2019. And I talk about the attendance a little further in the report, but I just wanted to highlight that because we also, and you've heard me say over the last couple of months, that our attendance is lower than forecast, and it's not just particular to the Boise Center, it's actually common across the industry. As Pat said, our labor challenges continue with struggles in recruitment. You'll notice this month our cost of goods sold is a little higher, and it's because of the pay adjustments that we've done to retain some of the staff. I belong to a committee called Meeting of the Minds, and it's a lot of the city government entities, and they were sending out information on where they were projecting their pay raises and cost of living adjustments, and they're anywhere from 6 to 8%. That's what they're doing to retain their staff. And then, of course, the increased labor costs are slowing the gross profit ramp up. So as our revenues increase, our gross profit should be increasing, but because of the increased labor costs, it's not increasing at as fast of level as our revenues are. But overall, we're still doing very well. Right now we're $1.9 million, or almost $2 million. The law says $2 million less than budget. Most of that, as Jody pointed out, is $1 million, and you're over $1 million in tax revenue. That results in $1 million positive to the good with the district. But even the center is almost $900,000 better than budget. So that's always good news. Financial highlights here. This is the district. This is the tax revenues. We're still, again, like Pat said, had $1 million month. We're running at 5.2 million. Our budget's 8.1 million, and we're forecasting $9 million. This is the Boise Center. So our revenues last month were on budget. This month we were a little bit under budget. So we were about $135,000 under budget for revenues. When I went back and reviewed it, we lost $95,000 in revenue due to canceled events from COVID. And then as I was saying, in the industry average is 30%, well, our forecasted attendance is down 11%. So we're actually doing better than industry. If I take that reduced attendance times the average revenue per attendee, that has affected our revenue by about $55,000. Between those two, if those two events wouldn't have happened, we would have been on budget. AV continues to have record revenues. Food is running about 37% of revenues. Our direct labor was at 76% this month. And our cost of goods sold increased by 7% due to the retention bonuses. And again, if we would have hit budget, our direct labor percentages would have been lower as well. Food costs as a percentage of food revenue are slightly below budget. So we're starting to see some of the benefit of some of the price increases that we have done. Employee-related expenses are a little over budget due to employee search expenses. Insurance is running above budget. Just, we updated the values, and of course with, I would imagine that this next year with the budget, it's going to be higher because with increasing real estate values and costs, a lot of our costs are related to the value of our buildings. And then our loss of 668,000 is 96,000 over budget this month, and that is because of the labor. And then our year-to-date remains well within budget.
Madam Chair, Emery, quick question. Do you or Pat, do you know what the national average is for a percentage of labor?
It's really hard to get any statistics on conventions. The industry has not developed standard KPIs and a standard reporting process to report that. In a private, let's take a restaurant, and you can help me out here, maybe Pat, but normally you figure it's like 30, 30, and 30, right? So your direct labor is 30%, your direct costs are 30%, and then your labor, and then your sales general and administrative is 30%, and you would have a 10% profit. Obviously, conventions don't follow that model because they're created to drive economic impact, which is the primary consideration. And that's why they created the hotel tax revenue, was to cover the losses of the convention center. There's only 1 or 2 convention centers in the United States that makes a profit. And one of them would be the one in San Diego that's right outside Disneyland. And I think the second one might be Florida.
I was just curious. Thanks.
No, yeah.
Pat, you want to add anything?
No?
And year to date, I'm gonna skip all of, you can read that if you want. Right now, our loss is 18.5% below budget, so we're doing well year to date as well.
Is the labor expense under budget because of fewer people?
Or year to date, is that? Higher revenues?
Higher revenue, but we also, particularly in April and May, exempt management put in. Pardon me. They filled in a lot of Fridays and Saturdays, where normally we would have had non-exempt labor. So, which was problematic. I mean, that was one of the key problems with just keeping people vertical for 2 months.
Yeah, because I would assume that, when you're back at staffing level, that it would be at or above budget because of expense on wages, right?
But one of the, we implemented going into 2022, we implemented cost increases, particularly on the food side. And we also took up our room rental. You're not going to see that until, as Henry alluded to, about now because of the contracts that were already in place. So we're starting to see some improvement on the margin side. I don't know that I don't know that those changes will totally offset, although I just reviewed this morning further price increases on the menus for the fall, and they're pretty significant. So those will take effect immediately, or for the fall, at least for the holiday season, October, November, December. So we should continue to see some offset into the fall where we're bringing all these employees on. There should be some offset of the wage increases so that the increase in labor expense should not be significant as a percentage to budget. It'll go, yes, it will have a negative impact. The cost of labor will go up as a percentage. But because of the price increases we're putting on, particularly on the food side, it should help pretty well.
And then the operating trend revenue for Boise. So for the center is, our budget's 8.1 million. We're trending right now at about 7.7 million. I would, bearing anything happening with COVID, that's probably low. I would expect we went through and did another forecast review internally, and I would expect that number would go up next month. But we're pretty darn close, despite the fact that we've done some freezes on booking more events, and also the fact that the size of the events are smaller than they have been.
And you're gonna wait to release the ability for clients to increase the guests until September, August timeframe?
Late, as soon as, I'm very serious about BSU, that if we see a positive, return on the investment with the current staff to bring in their friends and relatives, we'll know that, by the end of August, where we're setting. So the end of August, first part of September, which actually still gives, we're looking at Festival of Trees, so that's the end of November. Right now, we've asked them to hold at one number, but they could grow 20 to 25% if we get the employees. And that's the same thing for some of the other big local charitable events that we have planned for the fall, predominantly October, middle of October through the end of November. So that will still give the organization plenty of time to sell. They would like sooner, but that's about where we are.
And I want to point out here too, that even though we're under budget for June was still the second highest month for June, just behind 2018. So it's still moving in a very positive direction for us. So I just wanted to maybe dig down a little bit. I talk every month about AV revenues and how well they're doing. And so I thought I would give you this might help give some perspective. So if you look at 2022, we are at a full 2018, 19, 20, and 21, those are 12 months. And you can see that 7 months of 2022 is almost at the same level as 2018. Our 2022 revenue for 7 months exceeds 12 months for 2021 by 126,000.
I'm assuming you guys also increased the price of AV services.
Well, and we've made investments, the hybrid events certainly have added to the AV revenue. But I just wanted to acknowledge, I guess, our AV team and how hard they're working to make it happen. Okay, our square foot utilization, we had our trend continuing to trend upwards, and the blue, which is next year, the 2023 forecast is trending upward as well. It looks like, as you can see, that it's going to be a good year and is actually at this point right in that optimal target range. The aquatic center, they make their rent payment every month, for which we're very grateful. Thank you guys, and they're very timely. We had no legal fees in June, and then we transferred 1.4 million from the district for building costs. And that, any other questions?
Any questions for Pat or Anne Marie? Seeing none, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approval? Opposed? Anne Marie, you're up for RFP investment services.
I think Kristen at the beginning had alluded to that. We had 3 proposals come in, so the 3 parties that are interested are US Bank, Clearwater Advisors, and Invesco. Invesco is our current provider. So we have put together the scoring session. The next step is to put together a meeting with the finance committee to go through and score the proposals. And then from there, if we want, depending on how the scores come out, to do an interview with each one of the or any of the advisors that we'd like to visit with. I did want to acknowledge we didn't do we had a meeting posted on Friday due to travel arrangements. We weren't able to have it, but Dan Bates from Clearwater Advisor did come personally to attend the meeting. So that was, and I visited with him afterwards and apologized for not being able to have the event, and sent an email out to each one of the individuals, giving them the results of the bid opening. Since it was an email, there really wasn't a bid packet to open, but so that's moving along.
Madam Chair,
Yep.
how much money are we talking about?
Right now, it's about 18 million.
Okay, so it includes the stabilization fund and the capital reserve and all of that.
Yes, we just manage it all as one big bucket. When I first started, we had 2 different, one was like a 3 to 5 year account, and one was a 1 to 3 year account. It's just easier to manage them all together.
Yeah, and they're 100% government backed stuff, right? So it's. Thank you.
Or and munis, the state munis.
Just a clarification, statutorily, there's no percentage that we can put into equities. It's all fixed income.
No fixed. In fact, one of the items we're gonna go over is the investment policy, because we're making just a few changes to bring that up to current, going into this new solicitation. And so I can go over some of that.
Any other questions for Anne Marie? at
Well,
this
let's
time?
just follow up on that
Yeah.
policy. Do you know when it was, I know it's currently dated 2011, but do you know when it was originally established?
Trying to think.
I mean, almost all governmental agencies used to be like only bonds and only government bonds, and almost everybody's loosening their tie a little. And
We actually have tightened ours down a little bit. Ours, we were invested in the LGIP, which is the state pool, and they invest in some things that weren't in compliance with allowed under our policy, and so we moved out of the LGIP.
yeah,
There's 2
well, our state
statutorily,
treasurers have been among the most incompetent money managers.
there's 2 state rules that allow what you can invest in. One's A and one's B, and we don't invest in the B, which is a little more risky. Our policy says we only invest in the A's.
And Anne Marie, is this our policy or is this
No, this is our
Dictated
policy. We,
by state statute first, what we can and can't do?
no, the statute designates with a governmental entity in the state of Idaho what you can invest in.
We're limited.
And it's not just self-limiting.
Oh, no, that's statutorily
Yeah,
limited.
okay.
But we're a little more conservative. The statutory designates list A and B.
Got it.
B is some of the equities, a little more. But the way, your number 1 purpose for your investments is stability, retention of capital, right? And so my personal opinion is there's no reason to take that additional risk when your primary purpose is liquidity. Earnings is a second or third or even maybe fourth goal for your investment portfolio.
So what are we benchmarking these our investment service companies on then, if not return?
We put out an RFP. I mean, there is a return piece to it, right? But that's not because, right, you could take a higher risk and get a higher return. Doesn't necessarily mean you would get your capital back. So that's why we have an advisor as they go, and there's a level of trust there. One of the things the policy was based on was, and I forgot to tell you this, Kristen, we had what they call a discretionary services, which is what we have with Invesco, which says they can invest based on their discretion as long as it's within our policy. One of the things we're changing in this is we're going to a non-discretionary, which says any purchases they make, they'll run through one of us so that we can at least make sure they're getting their 3 bids and make sure that we're getting the best price. So it just adds that one extra level of oversight that we don't have today.
And cost was another one, Jim,
Madam Chair, Jim,
and local.
That's, okay, that's what I thought we talked about local and then the fees that they're charging.
I will say Invesco's been very, very reasonable on their fees. So that it'll be interesting. I have not looked at the proposals, but it'll be interesting to see what the pricing is.
Because it doesn't sound like there's a lot of variability in what they can do investment wise, so it doesn't. I don't know, this is probably more up your alley.
well, Madam Chair, I was just going to say, and Jim, I think the result of the policy discussion today ought to be to put it over until we've hired somebody and have a joint conversation about what their perception is of how conservative we are compared to other state agencies and whether we would consider an enhanced return. Because at $20 million, it's worth get another 50 basis points or something. It's adds up.
So I'm done with the investment services.
Okay, and then we can touch upon Paul more.
So the investment policy will be presented in the last section.
Okay.
So we can go over that.
Okay. Anything else regarding the RFP at this time? Ryan and group?
Everybody, thanks for having us back. I would give you guys a couple of quick updates on a few things, and you brought a few photos from the construction site. It's kind of amazing to see how things are kind of progressing forward. And so I tried to put together some kind of progressive pictures. We can kind of see how this building has gone up. And I think Pat has mentioned that CM company uses this program called Procore. So every day we kind of get this daily update on what's happened, and they typically will include some photographs of progress. And of course, we're up there visiting as well. But we'll kind of pop through some of these. And again, this is right when the building started going up, kind of the first truss that went up, and so I have to kind of flip through some of those for me. And we kind of see as they start to expand. They put it at this point 3, and then the next one I think you'll see they've started to fill that in with the Kevlar material, and they put the outer sides in, and then they fill it with some insulation. Next one, and then they put the inside in, and then everything gets stretched. So it's kind of funny how it goes up, but we're seeing this section, and then from there. The next one, and you start to see, okay, now we're going to start adding more and more of these trusses and more of these sections. So when you drive up to the site today, what you'll see is essentially we've got a 315-foot long building. There's 21 individual sections, and they've got 15 of them essentially erected. Not all of them quite yet are filled, but they're getting really close to filling in. I think they have filled in all the way to Finley Street, and now they're working on the other side as well. So I'm going to flip through those. Just a little bit earlier shot on some more of those sections going in. You kind of see the difference between that picture and this one, how that once they kind of get everything filled in, how it pulls tight and it's, like a standard wall to touch essentially. Just a shot from the other side, kind of this is an angle looking towards Finley. We're standing essentially where like the locker rooms would be, looking down across the pools. What that building that's put there now is almost exactly the length of the competition pool. So kind of where those steel beams start and where they end essentially is the competition pool, and then the remaining space gets filled in with the secondary lesson pool, and then of course the locker room structure behind that. So just a few other shots kind of as we go through the inside of that building. Pretty interesting process. It's just kind of every time you go up there, you kind of see something new that's gone up and how they put it all together. And Sprung, we had a meeting with CM and Sprung last week, 2 weeks ago, last week. And everything's on target. Everything's on exactly the schedule that they had anticipated. There's nothing that's kind of behind at this point, which is fantastic. They were all pretty pleased with how well this process has gone. The pool that came manufactured in Italy arrived in the port a couple weeks ago and arrived on site yesterday. So the pool is on site and secured, obviously, storage containers, and those things will get unloaded and prepared for the pool construction, which will begin towards the middle to late August. We'll start to see the excavation of the pool. So they're going to leave what will be the west end, or excuse me, the west end of the building. So the far end there will be enclosed. They'll close that side so they can begin the construction of the locker room space. And they will leave the east side open for the construction vehicles to go in and out of that building while they do the construction itself. So it's all coming along pretty nice. It's pretty amazing to see it all coming together. Nick and I were also down in, up in or over in, think about geography wise, Portland a couple weekends ago, and that's where the senior sectional meet was held this last year. That's the meet that we will hold next July. Just had a lot of great conversations with the teams that were attending. They're all very excited to be here in Boise. Literally the Monday after that, I fielded a number of emails regarding places to stay and everything else, at which point Nick took the opportunity to meet with Lucas at CBB, and they have started to put together some programs, for lack of a better word, that kind of hotel packages and other things that we're going to start providing to all of the teams that participated in that meet, as well as the meet that will be after that in August. We actually leave for Sacramento next week to go to the age group zone meet. That's in Sacramento this year, and we'll be in Boise next year, and we'll be able to provide all that information to the teams next year. So, we're a year out, and teams are already starting to book their hotels and arrange for travel to be in Boise next July and August. So, people are obviously asking, are we going to get it done in time? Good. And as of now, everything's on schedule, looking great. So, everyone's pretty excited to be here in Boise and to have kind of another pool in the rotation to bring the teams to. So. Exciting.
So what is the pattern on the outside? I know you can see it when you drive in from the freeway.
It truly is just a random pattern. There's no specific design there. It is based off of once you kind of start to see this whole thing, it'll look more kind of scattered. But it is kind of designed off of Jeff Bezos's space program. The building that he did down in California looks very, very similar in different colors, but just kind of a random array rather than something that was very linear.
When do you start hiring staff, and how many staff does it take for this?
It's a pretty low staff arrangement. Again, we've got essentially two functions. The main function is renting one of the pools, right? We don't have to provide staff for that, right? The swim team's in there, they have their own staff, their own coaches. We have a swim lesson program that will, of course, require staff. So we essentially have our operational models designed to have essentially a key administrator, and then we'll hire, essentially lesson staff. And that process will certainly begin as we get closer to the new year and be preparing for training and whatnot to be open by March 1st. So March 1st is still our target date for the doors.
remembering incorrectly, are there gonna be garage door type things on the side?
Yes, so the side you're looking at here, you can kind of just see one little tiny opening there. So the south side will not have the garage doors. It's gonna have one door of the main entryway. We'll have this door that you're seeing right here. Will be actually the center exit way. The other side of the building is where all the garage doors are. And when you're out there, you can see how they have really opened up and left those spaces open where they'll put the garage door base in. So almost the whole north facing wall will open up with garage door spaces.
Madam
Any
Chair.
questions on that?
Ryan?
Yeah.
Can you remind me what we talked about last month when I asked you about your fundraising activities? And how much did you say you have in the bank?
So difference between bank, of course, and committed, right? So we've got in total 8.8 that we have procured or have in the bank or have already spent on the project.
How much do you have in the bank?
How much is left in the, including the loan funds or just in the bank?
In the bank?
About $500,000.
Thank you.
Any other updates that you want to chat about? If not, we'll just kind of roll into the discussion. I don't know if you wanted to do a little summary. I don't know if you were able to connect with Jim because he wasn't here last month regarding the discussion that we had about your request. I don't know if you want to give a quick update overview of your.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just do a quick update. I mean, essentially where we're at, and I apologize, I should have brought the slides from last month, but I, of course, have the numbers to kind of walk through. But, you know, as we've kind of discussed last month, whether it be supply chain or whether it be, you know, just the economy at this point, the budget obviously has grown a little bit more than we had obviously hoped. And so, you know, we've been working pretty hard behind the scenes on trying to figure out how to fill that gap. And one is through procuring the financing through ICCU. And we had a great question about the loan commitment letter. I just simply haven't asked for it, so I'll do that when we get back, just so we have that on file. And that kind of provides everybody a little bit of comfort. And so what we find ourselves with is we've got the loan funds from ICCU and the funds that we have raised to date, and try to do math in my head real quick. And I think that put us at, total budget is 18.8. We, of course, had the 5 from the auditorium district. And then we are going to get the 5 from ICCU, and that left with essentially 5 left to fill. What we approached you guys with last year was the proposal to add $2 additional million to the lease agreement. And then we have been working to fill that remaining $3 million bucket that we have in order to finalize the project. And in just the last month, we've had some really great conversations, nothing that I'm quite yet ready to make public, but we're making some really positive headway on that final $3 million. So we're feeling very good about where we're at right now.
Yeah, so I know you were going to be meeting with foundations and
Yep.
such to get funding and possible sponsorship.
Yeah, we've met with a number of individuals, foundations, a couple different agencies that provide different grants and whatnot. And again, very productive conversations and a lot of interest in the project and understanding the benefits to the community. And, you know, unfortunately, we've had the last month several incidents of drowning in the valley. And, you know, I think it creates a little bit of awareness for the need for water space and teaching kids to swim, and adults for that matter. So, you know, it's not positive press, but it's press for the need for water space, the need for lessons in the valley. And those things, you know, help the conversations we have with some of these organizations that are looking ways to solve those problems.
I know I asked last month, but if we don't give you the money, what happens?
We hit pause on the project and we still keep pounding the streets for funding. And you know, obviously, if we have to delay the project, then we potentially, we won't lose these meets that we have outlined, this July and August meet. People want to come to the valley, but what it probably means is they get deferred, right? We have to push them into 2024, so on and so forth until the project's done. So if we have to pause the project, then that's what we do. Obviously, there's no guarantee that the costs stay where they're at. In all likelihood, they continue to go up. So that's, one of the reasons why we've pressed hard to keep going forward. And the advice we've received is that we should expect costs to stay where they're at or continue to rise. And if we could kind of continue to push forward, then it's going to be to our benefit. And obviously, keeping the events that we've got slated to be here and make sure we do it the right way is important to us as well.
And it's just a reminder, a good portion of the additional costs on the building was the HVAC system. And the other, just labor, I think labor and HVAC were a big.
Labor and
portion of that.
HVAC were the two primaries. The initial estimates that we had prepared based on similar buildings and whatnot were kind of that HVAC coming in between 800,000 and $1 million, and it came in at 2.2, and the labor to construct the building essentially double what was anticipated originally. And items of that nature certainly have created a pretty sizable increase in the overall cost of the project.
So Madam Chair, we provide the 2 million, that allows you to continue, but if some of these foundations, if that last 3 million, are you still gonna have to pause at some point? If you don't, if none of those foundations come through or your other fundraising efforts?
Absolutely. I mean, but again, I think the key thing is we're not gonna stop doing what we're doing, obviously, right? Pause, if it's a pause, then hopefully it's a short pause. But again, I feel really confident about the conversations we're having and that we're not gonna have to go that route and pause anything. But to answer your question, frankly, yeah, if these potential, donors or naming rights people don't come through, then we will have to at some point say, okay, let's take a time out. Let's, we don't want to be in a position in which we are owing a contractor, obviously, right? We want to make sure that we're doing this all from a cash flow perspective and keeping the project moving in a healthy manner.
So Madam Chair, one question is for Mike. Is there a limit to, so is it 2 million, that was in at 7 million, is there a cap on what we can participate in based off of what the facility is? Is it or are we at liberty to provide more if they came back to us?
You mean like a statutory limit or some other?
I thought there was a ratio or something that had to do with whatever our portion, whatever we, the land or the, I was under the assumption that we were limited on how much we could provide them. But I may have misheard that.
Madam Chair.
I mean, based on what the agreement is currently, it's written at 5 million, but we can change, we can amend or update the agreement to, if we wanted to go to 7. If they wanted any more beyond that, we'd have to do this whole thing again, and they'd have to come and ask for more money, then we'd have to amend the agreement again. So I guess we're putting our own cap on it, I guess. Is that kind of where we're going? Does that answer your question about?
Well, I'm just thinking there's a lot of risk of not finishing the project if the 3 million doesn't come through. So if the fundraising towards the end of, if we want to commit more so that there is no risk of the project stalling or pausing, and maybe a longer discussion, and maybe something for a future meeting, depending on their success within their fundraising. I just wondered why you guys hadn't asked us for more.
Really, because we had done an analysis on what we thought the cost of the land and building was going to be based on our original proposal, which was kind of coming in at 5, and where it is today, which kind of came in at 7. So we were trying to be, again, continue to try to just be good partners and say, this is kind of where the project started, and this is where we're trying to keep it. I ran some percentages. When we started off, this was kind of a 42% district, 58% from our side. And if we add the 2 million, then it's 37% district, 63% our side. So, the percentages have changed a little bit. We're taking a little bit higher percentage of it, but again, we really try to tailor it more specifically to what you guys had outlined how you want to participate, right? We want to participate because we want to get the land and we want to make sure the building is covered. So that's where I decided to kind of keep those numbers in.
When will you know on your fundraising efforts regarding the 3 million?
Good question. I wish I had a solid answer for you, but I know just from a timing perspective, we're gone all of next week. And so it'll be at least the second week of August before I'm kind of back hitting the streets on all that stuff and having these renewed conversations. But I do anticipate having some results by the end of August for sure.
If you have that remaining 3 million that you don't raise, what is the timeline on having to stop construction if we give you the 2?
That should put us easily into October-ish. I can go back to CM and see where they're at. It probably depends on the start of the pool and when that pool construction actually begins. Excavation piece, not necessarily the expensive part, but concrete pour and those things of that nature, the labor in terms of inside the pool. So to me, that's where I see the holdup probably comes the actual installation of the pool. That's the part of the project that we can take a time out on and pause easily. Finishing the building and doing the locker room space, those sort of things can probably continue to move forward pretty easily. But the pool component itself would be the easiest piece to pause.
I'm assuming you have plan B and C.
Sorry, what's that?
You have a plan B and C.
Absolutely.
Are we plan D?
Planning.
After I just ask one kind of further question of Ryan, just to make certain, Ryan, is there anything in terms of the loan that we may need to execute or approve that the bank's looking for the district to do at all?
Not at this time. I think the only discussion that we had previously, Mike, is whether or not that was something you guys needed to approve before funds were drawn, just because of the nature of the lease arrangement.
And I think we determined not, so yeah, unless the banks look, I just want to make certain in case the bank was looking for something else from us, I just want to make certain if we knew what it was, we could discuss it or approve it, but if we don't know, we'll assume we're, I guess, good at this point for that part.
Yeah, at this point, not at all. Okay.
We're still in first position on the building, right?
Yes.
Any other questions or?
Madam Chair, if I may, the board asked me to represent it in negotiating this contract, which I did. We spent well over 20 or 30 hours with our team and Ryan and his team. And when they came to us last month with this new news that 5 million wasn't enough, it was a gut punch. Because I remember talking, when we put this together, it was gonna be 3.5 or something, and Jim Walker made it 5 just so there'd be plenty of room. And so it was, and both High and Jim were pretty firm on the 5 million. That's probably why they didn't ask for more. They're afraid they'd get the fireman carry out of here. But when we worked through it, and so we reconvened the teams, and when we worked through it, I became convinced that the $2 million, our share of the overrun was not deliberate. It's not nefarious. It's certainly not illegal. There's projects, it's about a 40% increase in the total project, not just our share. And there's projects all over town shutting down. Tommy Alquist has 3 buildings on hold. I don't know that it's an option for us to shut this down where we are. And so the project, it went from 14.4 million to 18.8 million, and they asked us to pick up 2 million of it and committed to do the rest. And our team, I think, decided that that's okay. It's not our first choice, but we're partners, and they've been easy to work with, great partners, and I think we have as well. I think the partnership still makes sense. I'd like to make a motion to authorize the approval under the lease agreement to increase from 5 million to 7 million.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, I can't vote for this, and let me say why I can't vote for it. First, your efforts on fundraising changed from last month to this month. You said there was 8 million in the bank? 'Cause I remember asking you what was in the bank, and now you say there's only 500,000. I'm afraid you'll come back to us for more. And so we might as well do the whole project. And if we do the project, I'd like Pat to be involved. So that's why I can't vote for it unless those conditions are met.
Did you want to respond to the?
Yeah, if there needs to be clarification, I apologize. I think what I was trying to get at last month was there was 8 million committed, and that included our funds and our ability to draw on a construction loan. So if I stated that there was 8 million in the bank account, then that was incorrect, and I apologize for that. But I believe what my reference was with respect to what do we have in the bank, plus the construction funds. Since the last meeting, we've written a $1.1 million check to make sure that the pool gets offloaded. And then we've had 2 construction invoices that have been paid with the auditorium district paying a portion of that and us paying a portion as well. So that's certainly part of why those funds have depleted down to where we're sitting at today.
And have you had the loan funds deposited into your account yet?
No, because we won't draw on those funds. Those are the last end of the project essentially.
Answered any questions or changed? your
No,
mind?
I'm fine.
Any further discussion? Okay. Ready to take a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion's approved 4-1. Thanks, guys. Is there
Thank you,
anything else
guys.
you need to do? I know that when we did the CSL study, their main issue was the potential risk with construction costs, and that's certainly what we've run up against. So, this is something that, I think that we've been aware of that could potentially happen. I don't think anybody knew to what extent, with the pandemic on how things would change with supply chain and costs, but here we are. Thank you for your work on this, appreciate it. And if you would let us know what you need in order to amend the lease agreement, and we also make 5% on the money, so, hey.
It should be a particularly simple. I was talking to Henry about it. It's going to be a pretty simple.
And I'm sure Jody can answer any questions on our side if we need to. Okay.
We appreciate it. We think this is a great partnership. We're committed to get this thing done and get it done the right way. And obviously, we do everything we can to be, keeping Pat in the loop with everything. And if anyone ever has questions or just wants to do a site visit, just let us know. We'll get you up there and go through it.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Ally? Oh,
Jason, I
okay.
need my own break.
You don't mind, Ally? Yeah. Quick.
You can have your own water bottle. Jenny was worried about everybody getting dehydrated.
Goodness, we're not outside. Then maybe we would be dehydrated.
Sorry, Alan.
No. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thanks for the time today, since I wasn't able to join you all last month, being on the road. I'll be sharing some updates from the sales team, also looking at some of the CBB performance. Carrie Westergaard with the CBB had some scheduling conflicts, so I'm just going to be sharing a little bit of information on behalf of the CBB as well today. In particular, the topics we're going to cover, updates on our client events and travel schedule. I'll be showing our trade show booth enhancements that are coming along nicely, as well as updates on our convention marketing campaign. Looking at overall kind of convention and group trends. Pat and Anne Marie have alluded to some of this information, so it will be a little bit of a repeat, but some interesting data nonetheless. And then finally, looking at our 2022, where we're at year to date and future pace. So first up, updates on our client events and travel for the year. This is a bit of a repeat from the last presentation, but we did have a successful Helms Briscoe FAM and Customer Advisory Board this past spring. We had anticipated actually this week hosting a conference direct team meeting for Rob McCullough. We were planning on about 20 clients for that. However, it's been postponed to 2023. Some of the hurdles that came up was just frankly the teams, the conference direct team's availability. They only had a handful of reps confirmed for the event. And also one of the components of this meeting is the group gets to invite a guest. And with the airfare increases being so significant and those having to be paid out of pocket, they just weren't seeing the draw, unfortunately. So the team is really still interested in returning to Boise at some point, hopefully in 2023. So we'll have more to come on that. So next up, we do have the Connect Pacific Northwest event, and this is taking place in September. This is a regional conference that will attract, we're anticipating about 50 planners and 50 suppliers. Also included in the conference is a pre-FAM event. So the day before the conference gets started, we're collecting applications for a familiarization trip. We're aiming for 10 clients. That'll take place on the 18th. This is an appointment-based show. So those 50 planners and suppliers on average will meet with about 18 to 20 at these Connect regional events. One-on-one appointments. There's also education included. We do have a local keynote speaker lined up, Kristen Armstrong, who also was a speaker at our Helms Briscoe FAM this spring. We'll be including a Boise Center site tour, so a great opportunity to showcase the building to about 50 planners, Pacific Northwest planners. Offsite activities include an opening reception at Mother Earth Brewing Company, their new location downtown, as well as a Boise downtown walking tour and a closing reception at the Grove Hotel Terrace. We found that these in-market events have been successful so far, at least the two that we had over the spring. And so we've started exploring opportunities to bring another event to Boise, whether it be in 2023 or future years. The trade show calendar, and this is for the center and CVB teams, the only change to this schedule to report is we've added an event. It's another Connect event based in DC that will take place in November. And we're also including a Helms Briscoe client event that we'll host alongside the CVB. So a bit more information on that Connect DC event. Again, it'll be an appointment-based show. We'll be meeting with national associations and corporate accounts based in the Mid-Atlantic area. In between the conference and the client event, we plan to host with the CVB a client lunch. And then finally wrapping up our time out there is a Helms Briscoe client event. And this is in partnership with Amy Martell, the Helms Briscoe team that was here in April. What will be different about this particular event is not only will we be meeting with their team again, but also a significant amount of their clients. We're anticipating about 25 to 30 of their clients. And just for the board's awareness, some of their DC-based accounts are impressive. They work with groups such as American Association of Immunologists, American Physical Society, the Wilderness Society, which is an account that we engaged with pre-pandemic. So hopefully we'll have an opportunity to visit with them when we're out there. And also the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They represent a section called the National Organic Standards Board, which we bid on for a 2020 event and lost. But again, you know, continuing to engage with this particular Helms Briscoe team, I think will be to our benefit. So switching gears to the trade show booth, we've been working with the CDB on booth enhancements, and so I'm excited to share some renderings. And really, the booth itself is fairly far along in the build process. And so, what we see here is a 20 by 20 footprint. It can be adapted to a 10 by 20 as well. And we're continuing to use our existing equipment. The street sign that you see kind of on the edge of the picture on the left, the Welcome to Boise street sign. Also that countertop that you see in the back, that was made from, custom made from a tree, actually, a piece of wood with a live edge here in Boise. And the stools are pre-owned as well. This particular booth is going to include, you see the they're 75-inch monitors. We'll be able to run different media simultaneously. Also the Boise Center Commission Ward Hooper artwork on the back. So we're going to be using that kind of as a selfie wall when we're doing the 20 by 20 floating booths, which is what we have at ASAE, and which is where we're going to be using this particular booth for the first time. The vinyl flooring we'll own. It's got a hardwood kind of look. This is nice because we won't have to rent carpet anymore, which tends to be a pretty significant cost actually, and one of the more wasteful components in the trade show industry. It also has kind of a hidden storage. If you look behind the monitor on the left, that'll be a lockable space for us to put items overnight when the trade show floor closes. And this booth is being made by a company here in Boise called Catapult. They specialize in custom-made trade show booths and displays.
Ellie, is any of this, the cost of this booth, is it able to be underwritten by the Department of Commerce grant, or is it all borne on us?
So this is Boise Center funded, and part of that was, you know, we're using it at all the shows that Boise Center goes to. It's that Boise Center and the CVB go to. So this isn't part of the CVB's grant. They will be paying for the storage, the insurance on it, so they're responsible for maintaining it.
Ellie, don't they, like at IMAX and a couple others, don't they also pay for the setup and tear down?
Yes, exactly. So they pay for the footprint on the trade show floor, which can be tens of thousands of dollars just to even have your space on the show floor. And they also pay for the shipment and setup and tear down as well.
In some cases where the invited by the CVB has to be the one to book the space. And then this is sort of our contribution to that as well. So while they didn't pay directly for the construction, they pay for a lot of the incidental costs that go along with it along the way. And then we get to attend as partners.
And some of those shows that, oh yes.
Ellie, going to these meetings and seeing buyers, do you have an idea of a percentage of how many people or how many contracts you get out of these meetings? Just as a percentage.
I don't have that number offhand right now, no. And some of those are, you know, we can track over the years, but it could be we see them at, you know, a show 3 years ago, we see them again this year, and then we might get an RFP next year. And so I mean,
Sure.
it could be a long life cycle before something converts, but it's something I can look into based on how we do track affiliations. So if we meet someone at ASAE, for example, we'll input them into our system and attach ASAE to it so we can see where, you know, any of that interaction pays off.
So when they contact you, you don't lose them.
Correct. Yeah, they don't just go floating by. We'll capture their information and make sure that they're input
Right.
into our system.
All right, thanks.
So The main three shows where we anticipate the booth being used is ASCE annual meeting, and that's one that the team will be attending in Nashville here in a few weeks. Also IMEX America, and let me back up a little bit. The ASCE is a 20 by 20 footprint. So we'll be using the booth, and it's a floating one, so it'll be just as we saw in the renderings. IMEX Americas in Las Vegas in October, and that is a 10 by 20 if I'm not mistaken. What's kind of neat is the booth can also adapt. So you see the back wall, how it's really high. Most shows, they have a limit as to how high your booth can go. So if there's someone behind us, directly behind us, all the audience would see would be the top part of the Welcome to Boise sign. So that can actually be whited out if we're in an inline booth. So that would be the case in Las Vegas at IMEX. The other show, Connect Marketplace. Again, Connect produces a number of different events, several regional, and then the Connect Marketplace is their big national. This year, timing wise, actually is taking place here in a couple weeks. And so, we're taking the booth instead to ASAE, but it will be in Detroit this year. So opportunity to have it Connect next year. And one of the benefits of it being constructed and stored here in Boise is we can actually use it in town. So for these in-market events that we host, we could actually set it up in the building here and kind of activate it if we want to host like a food and beverage hour or appointments out of that footprint as well. So next up, we're going to be looking at just updates to the convention marketing campaign, the work that we're doing with the CVB and Orange 142. The information in these squares here show activity. Well, I'll back up a little bit. When we're looking at our June impressions, so for the month of June, we had nearly 700,000 impressions, and that was for all tactics, digital, email, social. When we look at where the markets that we're hitting, the majority here, we see activity in Seattle, Tacoma, followed by Portland, Denver, LA, San Francisco, and Spokane. And I thought it'd be interesting to see where the website traffic is originating for both the CVB and the convention center. And so you see where the impressions are hitting. We have website traffic correlations with Seattle and Los Angeles. And obviously we get a lot of engagement from kind of the West region. Some interesting markets pop up on our website list, including Houston, Atlanta, and San Antonio. And so those could be opportunities that we look further into, whether we want to engage with that market with a sales mission or some sales calls with the cities. The CVB has launched a new website. So if you look on the left, that's just a snapshot of their homepage. They definitely have a whole lot of new creative. They've sort of revamped the tone and the colors of their website. I definitely encourage the board to take a look at it. If, when you have a moment, visit boise.com. There's some interactive capabilities in the website, so the user could go in and actually build an itinerary for their time in Boise based on the season of when they're going to be here. And the updates to the website also correlate to some creative updates for the Orange 142 convention campaign. So the other two squares up there is just an idea of, updates to the color and the font, just so we make sure that it's cohesive with the CVB website, which is where the planners are being directed to when they engage with the ads. The June email marketing campaign went to close to 67,000 individuals. It was opened by 34,000 people, which translates to a 51.5% open rate. And that's phenomenal. Industry benchmark for email marketing is around 20%. And so we continue to see really high engagement with the emails that are going out. Year to date, convention marketing media results. The campaigns generated 5.3 million impressions, resulted in 53,000 clicks. And then you see in that third block down, just the click-through rate based on the channel. And I mean, really overall, what we're seeing is just really good performance in the different areas, be it email, in-need or display. And the CVB has noted that the campaign is driving quality traffic to their meeting planner section on their website. So looking at group trends, we're gonna dig into a little bit of how Boise Center is performing compared to counterparts across the nation. And Pat and Anne Marie did kind of allude to some of this information that was shared, and we'll see here conversation and data from Venue Connect. I want to start out with, this is a PACE report for Boise Center business for room nights associated with Boise Center groups. This is generated from Ungerbach, our booking system. And what we're looking at is a snapshot. It compares the current snapshot to the same period year prior. I know there's a lot of little numbers up there, so I'm happy to send this to you all via email. But basically, what we see is that 2022 and 2023 are pacing, they're ahead of pace. And if I had a little red kind of laser here, I could actually circle. If you look at, there's a row called tentative. That's what we see is what's in the pipeline. So those are room nights on the books that have yet to turn definite, for example. Oh, do you have a laser?
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
It doesn't work on
Okay.
the screen.
Oh, that would make sense.
So, things we knew things were looking really good for 22. Things are shaping up nicely for 23. We already have 20,000 room nights confirmed with another 13,000, close to 14,000 still in the pipeline. And so that should exceed what we see coming through for 2022, which we anticipate being a record year in terms of room nights generated from Boise Center business. 2024 is showing us behind pace. However, the story there is that we've got over 22,000 room nights in the pipeline. So this is where some of the conversations and trends, I kind of want to share with the board is groups, and especially larger groups, it seemed like are waiting longer to confirm. A lot of that just has to do with uncertainty, whether it be COVID, lingering COVID concerns, or the economy. Boise Center in general, most of our groups contract within that 1 year to 2 year time frame anyway. So we should be seeing, we're about at that time frame where 2024 events will start confirming. And so this isn't anything that's terribly alarming to me. Many of our events are repeat annuals on the books. So we do anticipate that 2024 will shape up to be a good year. And as Pat had mentioned, the larger groups that come through, we do face a challenge compared to other industries, just based on our market and the number of hotels we have and the number of rooms available. So while our bread and butter, as he said, is kind of that convention B group, which is 100 to 299 rooms on peak, we do like pursuing those citywides, but they do present a challenge. Just to kind of give some frame of reference, a group with 300 rooms on peak could take 7 hotels to fill that block. 600 rooms on peak, like a mega citywide, could be 9, 10 or more hotels to fill that block. And so if you're a planner who can fit that group in a convention hotel and have one contract, it's definitely a hurdle that we have to overcome here. The CVB has a master contract, which is a good tool that they can offer clients to kind of overcome that. And what that does is it compiles all the downtown hotels into one agreement. And so they would have the Boise Center agreement and then the hotel agreement to sign. But, so when we see our mix of convention groups and we have the fewer citywides and obviously majority of the Bs, that's one of the reasons why. So comparing national pace, again, if we think back to Boise, we're in really great shape for 2022 and 2023. This is a report that was issued by Tourism Economics, looking at future pace forecast for 2022 through 2025. This particular slide here, what it's telling us is that room nights that are on the books for 2022 are well below 2019, what was on the books for 2019. And so we're obviously on the other end of that spectrum, where our room nights on the books are exceeding pre-pandemic levels for 22 and 23. So positive story there as we look at Boise Center kind of compared to our national counterparts. And I should say this data is based on information that's pulled from Simple View, which is basically the Ungerbach equivalent for CDBs. RFP volume for Boise Center year to date, well, December through June, I should say, 203, and how that compares to FY22, it's 28% higher, and it's also 22% higher than FY19. Anne Marie touched a bit on our attendance and what the industry is seeing in general. This is just more anecdotal. I mean, Boise Center, obviously, we have some clients that have seen higher attendance post-COVID, whereas others have seen a significantly lower attendance post-COVID. So it kind of runs the gamut here. And overall, as she had mentioned, that the industry in general is seeing about a 70% attendance level versus 2019. And this was from Access Intelligence. It's a research and consulting firm that specializes in the event and venue industry. When surveying venues and event producers, you can see both of them are about at that 70% response. That's what they think that events are turning right now. Some of the concerns from meeting planner perspectives include inflation, the low attendance is a concern, and then the air travel issues. And we see here that inflation concerns have now eclipsed COVID, which is, I suppose, a good news, bad news. But this is definitely top of mind as costs continue to increase. Planners do see it impact their attendance or their events, whether from planning the event, event costs to the cost to the consumer or the attendee in terms of the airfare travel. And this slide just supports that statement as well. This is the different group meetings, the North Star Meetings group that issued this report, mirroring Access Intelligence planner concerns over higher cost of airline service, staffing, and budgets in general. As we look at 22 and into the future, I'd like to start off with just some of the team's recent wins over the last quarter. We see a handful of groups here that were secured. Cellcore Biosciences confirmed for next spring with 1,500 room nights for that event. NAGRA, which is a gaming regulators association for June of 23, over 300 room nights. Pacific Northwest Economic Region next summer, nearly 900 room nights. And then a multi-year with aerial firefighting for the fall of 2023 and 2024. The building also hosted Council of State Governments and the Brethren Church Conference that both took place last week simultaneously, and we anticipate that those events are bringing in about 1,900 room nights together combined. Targets year to date, again, Anne Marie kind of covered this, but just showing where we are year to date on our attendance and room nights, economic impact and event targets, and end of year forecast. Again, we do anticipate meeting those attendance, room nights, economic impact and convention targets. Local events are likely to fall short, and that's just simply because we paused taking on new events for the rest of the year until staffing rebounded. And like Pat said, we're hearing that's from some counterparts across the country as well. This just drills in by quarter, comparing our room nights and economic impact to 2019 levels. Again, the board has seen that we did get off to a slower start in Q1, but the remainder of the year we look to be exceeding our 2019 actuals in terms of room nights and economic impact. And really the story is that we've got a great couple years between 2022 and 2023 and keeping an eye on 2024 with a really strong pipeline there. The sales team performance goals, the key performance indicators are all looking good. They look on track to meet all those goals. And the team, as we are really looking closely at the new leads that come in, making sure that we're being really strategic, really intentional, and we're replacing them, until we feel that staffing has rebounded, we're confident that it's going to be consistent. We're trying to build in those dark days when and where we can, just to account for, full building flips or, talking with the food and beverage and event teams to make sure, those meals can be accommodated. So it's been definitely a team effort, interdepartmental effort to make sure that we can successfully execute the new events coming in. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Ally? Well, it's nice to see the conventions are up if the local events are down. So, I mean, it's a,
And but only because we've paused taking them. I mean, the inquiries coming in there are a ton of inquiries coming in that unfortunately, it's just, October is full, for example, so we really couldn't take any new events then. But I think, the demand is definitely out there.
We're seeing that a lot of the other hotels and things that have space have done exactly the same thing, which they're getting told no at the hotels. So some of the business that we hadn't really seen much before, like high school reunions and even weddings. Those inquiries are up significantly. And we just don't have it right now.
hopefully the BSU students show up in droves.
Ally's trying very hard to say, Pat, open the gates.
Hopefully we get some movement there. Thanks, Ally.
Thank you.
Pat and Anne Marie, policy review.
Go ahead.
This policy, that's the one we were talking about with the investments. So some of the there's just a few changes that we made to the policy. One of them was adding the verbiage that the policy will be presented to the board annually. There was also in the policy an attachment that said, this is the investment advisor, this is the custodian, and the fees. And I took that out because the contract will speak for itself, and otherwise you have to amend the policy every time you choose to make a change. So those were removed, and then I just put in here a statement that said agreements for investment advisors and custodian banks consistent with this policy will be completed and maintained in the district's records.
Chair. Emery, I like what Jody suggested earlier, is that once we decided on an investment advisor, maybe we work on the policy in concert with them. I mean, I know there's a lot of simple changes that have been made, but instead of amending it now and then
Okay.
re-amending it, maybe we could put it off, table this until after we've made the investment
Yep,
advisor
that's
decision.
perfectly fine.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Jim, Madam Chair. All three of our finalists are all highly qualified. The only, issues we're going to be talking about and determining is 20 million even. They're all such big organizations. Is 20 million even something they're going to pay attention to? And also what their thoughts are about the degree of conservatism or aggressiveness in our investment policy. And since we've had it for 11 years and not really, at least since I've been here, discussed it, I would appreciate supporting Jim's idea of putting it over until after we've hired.
And it wouldn't hamper that progress of hiring anybody in any way.
That's fine.
Madam Chair, the other part of the policies, and I'll hold off as well due to time, but when we worked with Ida Bailey, when Anne Marie led the charge and had Lee in, one of the things from the audit suggested that we have the board approved policies on an annualized basis. And what Anne Marie and I talked about was to start with the financial policy, and then there's the policy and procedures manual that we did back in like 2012 when Steve was here and that sort of thing. And they're all currently existing, most of these documents, or even our website, but the audit suggests that we actually get formal approval on an annualized basis of all these different policies. And rather than hit the board with a whole stack of them, effective December 1, we're going to try to stagger between now and then. So for instance, even though the board doesn't get involved in our handbook, it's reviewed by legal and HR attorney and that sort of thing. So for instance, we're going to make a change. We're going to add Juneteenth as a federal holiday. So that'll be a change that again, in conformance with the audit. We'll make you aware of it. Hopefully that'll be the end of August. And there'll be a couple of other quick ones at the end of August to approve too. And I'll hold off policy procedures, although there's no changes to it right now. We can review it in next year as part of protocol, but there's been really no need to change the policy and procedures that we've asked the board to operate in, and we included in orientation for all the board members. But again, you'll see these policy reviews now coming up as compliance with the audit. So some of them will be very cursory, and we'll try to get them to you ahead of time, but it should be pretty cursory. Unless there's a need or you suggest, and Emery and I feel that we should go through and review them. But, we've done the bylaws. We did the bylaws a couple of years ago, so I don't think there's anything there. So anyway, that's where this is coming. Well, this one is because of the financial services contract, but you'll be asked to approve some of these policies over the next few months. And then we'll just put it on an annualized basis. But again, didn't want to catch you off guard, but again, the audit says you all should at least check the box that says, yes, we talked about it, or we don't need to change. So.
All right, anything else? Any other questions regarding policy updates? No? All right, seeing no other business before the board, we were adjourned.
I didn't
Oh,
get a.
you got it.
Go ahead and adjourn. Go ahead. There's a whole bunch of flowers right outside.